Welcome back to the Restoring Darkness podcast. On today's show, I am pleased to be joined by Peter Augusta, the general manager of Casambi Technologies, Inc. Prior to his 20-year career leading teams and driving revenue in the lighting manufacturing controls industry, Peter worked in software. It was this distinctive blend of experiences that fueled his passion for harnessing technology for innovative problem solving, a passion he now brings to Casambi. And we're going to have that talk that many of us have heard about on this show about why there is not enough controls development in municipal outdoor street lighting, Mark Baker. So I'm joined by my co-host today, Mark Baker of the Soft Lights Foundation. My name is Michael Colligan. I'm the executive director of the Lighting and Darkness Foundation. And if you've never heard of the Lighting and Darkness Foundation, we do a lot of things. One of them is we help mitigate light trespass disputes. We create educational programming for lighting distributors, or what we call frontline lighting practitioners. And we do other advocacy work like produce the Restoring Darkness podcast. So if you want to donate to this, you can go to restoringdarkness.com. You can click the donate link. And many people have done it already. And we also finally, after many weeks and months, we have a recurring donor, Mark Baker. We have someone who gives money to the Lighting and Darkness Foundation every single month. So why not become a recurring donor? That's right. Um, Let me just see here quickly. I think I got through everything there. Peter Augusta of Casambi, welcome to the Restoring Darkness podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
We had met before at ArcLight, and I know Casambi is, and I'm just going to get right into it before I hand it off to my co-host for a bit.
Mhm.
But why is there so much focus on digital lighting controls on the inside of buildings when I see such a huge opportunity for in a host of areas, research, energy savings, dark skies, animal migrations, whatever. On the exterior lighting, there doesn't seem to be much there. Why is that?
Um, it's got to be more projects, more money, easier to do, less interaction with municipalities. Uh, we at Kasami really don't do municipality lighting. We do outdoor private parking lots. We do parks, which I guess is municipality, but it's municipality light. But there's a lot of restrictions, lots of redundancies, lots of integration points. So it's a difficult equation.
It's not a technical barrier though. Like the all of the research and development has been done. It's a matter of deploying in those areas, would it not be?
Yeah, I would think so. It's we can all of us, some better than others, probably can handle the integration. We can handle the redundancy. But it's a lot of time and effort. You've got to have very specific teams, especially when it comes to municipalities. You have to have dedicated teams for that. I
Hmm.
think to your point, most of the existing control companies, the lion's share of us at least, are geared more towards interior commercial projects, those types of things, or maybe even exterior, but the commercial area.
Hmm. I think it has to do with the fact that it takes so long to sell a municipality something. First to
Mhm.
convince them to do it, and then to go through the process of selling it to them. You could have two or three product cycles by the time they actually ended up buying something from you. So I see that.
Yeah, it's absolutely a commercial issue.
Yeah.
There's no doubt in my mind. It is for us. I would think others think of it as the same way.
Hmm. So yeah, so we the quest continues, Mark Baker, for the the ability to control outdoor lighting for all the different reasons we discussed on this show.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear you two talk because one of the big selling points for switching to LED streetlights was the controls.
Mm.
And yet I'm not really aware of any controls out there. Like,
Hmm.
so they went and did the switch to the LED product, but the control thing was like down the road. And now what I'm hearing Peter say is like, yeah, in fact, I don't know. It sort of sounds like the LED streetlights may burn out before you even get around to doing the controls. What
Mm.
do you think, Peter?
God, I would hope not. That's a long time. But to your point, though, municipalities made decisions to go with LED, and controls was part of the equation. It was talked about. It was a known factor. But there's always pricing pressures on them, and maybe they started out with that in mind. But perhaps sorry, perhaps what was delivered ended up being without the certain attributes or the features that would be make it easier to integrate controls to. Example being, I could think of a project in Miami that had every intention of putting in a NEMA connector, which meant that all we would need to do is come in and kind of connect, put like a little hockey puck module on the top of it.
Mm-hmm.
And there you go, wirelessly, boom, we'd be able to make connections and control those fixtures. But for pricing pressure, they took that out. So it makes it more difficult
Mm.
to enable those.
Hmm.
Wow. Would you, Peter, would you, this is sort of theoretical, but let's say they were able to accomplish that, what Michael's talking about, and putting in those controls.
Hmm.
Um, would they then be able to sort of help with the light pollution issue? Like, say, do you think a city could say, "Oh, we'll turn off the street light at I don't know 10 p.m., 11 p.m., and let it be dark for half the night"?
I would think that the maybe not turn off for security reasons. Light has a lot to do with security, but definitely dim down. If you take Casambi, there's a lot of flexibilities in what you could do where it could say, at 12 a.m., dim down to, let's say, 10%. If you use a sensor, again, commercial issue, if you want to put a sensor in every light fixture, when somebody comes into the area, then they could just come back up to a lighter, or I'm sorry, to a higher intensity. So absolutely, it could play a big role in the equation. Doesn't necessarily have to turn off, but it certainly could.
So,
It's interesting to hear you say that because, like, one of the reasons for switching to LED streetlights was to save money. So,
Mhm.
would you be saving if you dimmed it down to 10% of its normal wattage? I guess wouldn't you be saving just a ton of money? Wouldn't those controls pay for themselves by doing that?
I There's definitely an ROI. I guess it's all going to depend on the equipment and the specific energy use. But when you think about LED versus that of the older technologies, the glass and gas technologies, you're already at 65 to 70% savings. So now we're talking about what can I affect by dimming it down, and certainly there is going to be a net effect. Maybe it's an additional 5, 6, 7, 8, 10% at the outermost. Um, in a municipality, that means something. I'm not belittling it at the least bit, but a chunk was done when we shifted from glass and gas to that of LED. Now we're talking about how can we refine that. And in a large municipality or a small municipality, that's good money. That's a lot of money.
so to me, the ROI is more to do with social, environmental, and human responses to it rather than energy efficiency. I think, I looked at the features of some of your fixtures here, Peter, high color rendition, color temperature selectable. Is that tunable using your controls? The color temperature, can you tune it?
Yeah, we can enable the functionality of the light fixture.
Mm-hmm.
So we have the ability to say, to color tuning. Outdoor, does that mean anything? Um, I don't know. It could create an effect. Certainly, in some outdoor applications, we're manipulating actual color (RGB), which
Mm-hmm.
is a native part of our offering as well. That's usually to create a mood, to create some sort of a theme.
Mm-hmm.
Christmas, Valentine's
Sure.
Day. Um, Support your favorite football team.
Mm-hmm.
There's universities that we're working with that during game day they're turning their lights to game day colors.
Mm-hmm.
Um, those are cool ambiance types of things. I don't know that they're necessarily considered to be ROI, but I agree with you that we really should look from the social aspects. What are the return on investment? But today it always comes down to, well, today probably the past as well comes down to dollars. And are the cities willing to do that? I find universities definitely they're willing to do it because they see the value in changing the colors for the experiential side.
Yeah, so light pollution affects people, Peter. So we know, like from studies, that if you shine high Kelvin temperature white light on homeless encampments, for example, those
Yes.
people will leave,
Hmm.
okay? And they'll go somewhere else, all right? So they don't like it, right? We know that there's different, we know that crime is affected by light levels. So we know that some crimes are reduced and other crimes are increased when you increase light levels or increase clarity and color temperature. So smash and grabs are increased when you have more street lighting where there's cars and homes. And so we know that
They're decreased when you have more street lighting.
they're increased.
Smash and grabs?
Yeah. So people are
Really?
more likely to rob what's in a car when they can see what's in the car.
Oh,
Mhm.
okay.
Okay, so yeah, so
Adverse effect.
a lot of it's counterintuitive, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
but we also know that lighting is neither the cause nor the solution to crime. That's another thing, right? Is that the light level doesn't cause the crime or not cause the crime. Different crimes happen based on different light levels. That's what we know for sure. Um,
Mm.
and so, but being able to control it, there's this element of safety. So you have this flicker-free driver. If you dim, does the light does it not flicker? Because I know there's flicker issues when you dim. So if you dim, your
Mm.
lights don't flicker.
Well, again, Casambi is the controls company,
Yeah,
so we're giving a dimming command, and then it requires the equipment
sure,
driver LED to act in the fashion that it's supposed to. Certainly, things that we dim will flicker because it's maybe an inferior technology to others.
sure,
But that's not something that's caused by us. We're giving it a command, whether it's a 0 to 10, a DMX, a
right,
dolly
sure,
command to go to a certain intensity. Um, but that kind of enters into the equation too. Going back to this commercial thing, right?
hmm
I'm sitting in my neighborhood right now, looking at a light post outside that they definitely save money. Let's put it that way.
hmm
The end result is it's a very high Kelvin temperature light. It creates a lot of glare. You talk about a negative effect. Somebody who wears glasses like myself with
hmm
stigmatisms at night, it's very difficult to drive under.
hmm
But I suspect that because they were trying to get the lowest, the best price they could get, they probably, if they wanted to dim this, it probably would flicker. And that's an equation of the equipment that they choose.
right. But what I'm saying is that the possibility is that we can dim without flicker now in 2024.
Yeah, we can.
Yes,
Absolutely.
yes,
Absolutely. We do it, use hospitality in interior. We can go down to
sure.
0.01% and hold that.
Yes, without having any
Absolutely.
kind of jarring flicker or anything like that. Theatrical level control is available with LED now, right? Where you can dim,
Absolutely.
right? So what we're seeing is like different types of thrusts. Like there was a study in France, I believe it was France. So my producer will correct me if I'm wrong, where they actually put in street lights and gave the neighborhood people who lived in the neighborhood the control over them with an app,
Yeah.
and the lights were at the lowest dimmed level most of the time actually when that happened. And so and this is observed. People did not feel unsafe because the lights
Mhm.
were dimmed by 90% or whatever it was in the study, 80-90%, but having the ability to control them took away that safety fear that people have without having access to electric light. Is Casambi able to deliver those kinds of solutions? How close are we as an industry to
Yeah.
actually having that level of control over lighting?
Yeah, I've actually had and been involved with projects where, and this is towards a building developer, not necessarily the municipality, because as you know, the building codes are now forcing the developers to do things like sidewalks and do things such as the street lighting
Hmm
on their sidewalks and so on. But yeah, we've had a developer that specifically asked for that. I don't remember what the outcome was, but they said, "Hey, we would like to give this capability to the end user." Um, Thought process being that if there was too much light, they could dim it down. I think ultimately what they did was they allowed them to phone a friend, call up and just say, hey, could you please adjust this light? It's right outside my window. I want that,
Mm.
down at a lower amount. Really, it would be a question to you. If somebody has the ability to turn it off, you probably don't want to give them that. But maybe if they can, they could do it with Casambi where they have an application. We could give them access to that light outside their door, and allow them to dim it. It's just a matter of how they or who wants to govern that and how they would want to implement it.
Hmm.
But it certainly is a possibility. Yes.
You two have given me a great idea, so I want to explore this with Peter.
Uh-oh.
So, so Peter, we advocate for protection of people with disabilities. So
Mhm.
for a lot of us, this LED light is too intense. For
Mhm.
some people, it's causing seizures, migraines, and basically it's just too much and too intense. So if we had your controls from Casambi, let's say, let's talk about not municipal, let's talk about parking lot. And
Mhm.
if we set the typical light to pretty dim, so for those of us who don't like the intensity, just as the
Mhm.
normal, right, baseline would be dim. My concern is with the Americans with Disabilities Act, somebody might come and request it to be brighter because their vision is worse. So you have
Right.
this problem, right? Some people need it less, some people need it more. So with your controls at Casambi, could it be an accommodation for a person who needs it brighter for a little bit, right? That they could have that control on their phone. They come to the
Mhm.
parking lot and then they tap the button and it'll brighten up for them only, and then when they're done, then it would go back to this dimmer level. Does that sound possible?
Yeah, absolutely. It's, again, it's how much control do you want to give? I mean, in a way, I guess there would have to be like a guest pass for that, because there has to be security on any network, right? Certainly, anybody that has password and administrative rights or even user rights with us can get onto the application and they can manipulate the lighting. Question is maybe there's other ways to identify that person. Sensors.
Mm.
There's different types of sensors. I'm hearing of, in universities, that they've got sensors that can identify a person running towards another person and check that off as being, hey, a security risk. It's an
Mm.
aggressive type of a movement. With what you've said, I'm wondering, is there, a sensor or some sort of technology that could identify, a particular person in a wheelchair, as an example, that would maybe need some different needs and manipulate the lighting accordingly. Certainly could be a button or something like that, a manual thing. But yeah, there is a lot of different flexibilities. You had mentioned too about security. Earlier, saying that put the lights up and then people are going to see in the cars and they're going to be more apt to do a smash and grab. Absolutely, and not expected, but yeah, that makes a lot of sense. A cool security feature that we've run into, I'd love to say that we planned it, but it was kind of a
Mm.
byproduct of a auto dealership, is um, at night, based on the time, becomes 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, whatever they deem the right time, the lights dim down. They go down to whatever intensity level they want, but let's just say it's to 10%. As somebody walks into the parking lot, into the cars, there are sensors, and those sensors will then bring the lights up to full brightness, intended for rainy days, cloudy days, when in the southeast and in Texas, when a storm rolls in, it gets dark, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the byproduct of that was as a security at night, as somebody's rolling by and you see, lights in the parking lot going on, following a person, you kind of know, hey, there's somebody over there. It's
Mm-hmm.
3 a.m. Why don't I go check?
Mm-hmm.
So there's unintended security benefits the other way as well.
Yeah, the well commissioned occupancy controls are definitely something that deters criminals. I'll say that for sure. I anecdotally know that to be true, because if somebody moves towards a house and you turn the lights on, they move away from the home. That's for sure.
Mhm.
And so the idea of being monitored or watched is a powerful tool. And
Yeah.
sensors give the feeling, well commissioned, well done sensors give people the feeling that the space is monitored, or some sort of intelligent system is observing that. And I think that sensors can provide that. Whether or not wildlife trips that is a whole other story, right? So, I mean, the
Yeah.
sensors don't know the difference between a human and a raccoon. And so it could be going off for a raccoon or a deer or something like that as well. So we have to be careful with these
Yeah.
these types of things in some areas. Yeah. So this show is about light pollution, okay, and or about mitigating light pollution. And one of the things that's part of it is glare. And in this features here, we talk about glare. Can we control glare? Is it just intensity that we can use controls for, or do we have controls that activate shielding on lights as well? Is there
Right.
controls that will say, lower the baffle on the outside of the fixture by 30%? Are we there with that kind of electromechanical control of fixtures?
Yeah, I mean, I can't think of a fixture that does that specifically, but yes, we are there. We have fixtures or control over fixtures with some of our partners. Ledra Brands is one that comes to mind right now that has the ability to pan and tilt the light. So
Mm-hmm.
we, as a control company, can take control over um, the motors that do the pan and tilt in the same way that what you're suggesting, a shield coming down.
Mm-hmm.
But again, going back to, how do you handle glare right now? Yeah, you could do it mechanically, but it comes down to the proper lensing,
Mm-hmm.
the
Yeah,
proper
agreed.
design of the fixture. The fixtures that are outside my window right now, it's almost like a raw board,
Yes. You have a
facing
laptop
down.
in the sky, a super bright laptop screen in the sky pointing down.
And in this case, it's even worse because it's just diodes.
You can see the diodes,
And
yeah.
each one of them, I feel that it kind of pierces into my, straight through my glasses as I drive at night.
You're gonna get
Uh,
Mark's gonna go crazy in about a second. What do you got, Mark?
yeah,
Luminance? He
don't go to the city of
Go
Charlotte
ahead,
because
Peter.
they put these things everywhere. I don't know who
But
bought
I'm
them.
wondering, Peter, I'm wondering how you feel emotionally. You're in the lighting business. You've got the
Yeah,
soft lights, it looks like to me, behind you. And then outside your window, you've got this horrible lights. I mean, it's got to
yeah.
be
Oh,
driving your.
I'm angry to the point where I've called up the city and asked them, who's making the decision on this, and why don't you get people involved? I'd be happy to come in and talk to the council. But yeah, it's again, to answer this question, it's really a matter of, I think, about design, proper design. Certainly, a plethora of companies are designing the right fixtures, but this almighty dollar is always killing us.
Mm,
People are going to make decisions based on their pocketbook, on their budgets, and it's not always the right decision for us. It's certainly not the right decision for the deers that are eating my plants at night either.
mm,
I wish they didn't like high Kelvin temperature light, but it doesn't seem to bother them when they're chewing on my plants.
mm,
Um, so controls plays a part, design fixture choice plays a part, but I think the biggest problem that we have right now is the budget and who's making that decision and why. Socially, should we make better decisions, spend a little bit of more money, get better lighting? Yeah, I believe that. I know every lighting designer thinks that as well. But unfortunately, and there's a lot of really good, podcasts like this that are educating people on lighting. However, we're all talking to each other.
mm-hmm.
You know, I don't know how many, purchasing people from the city of Roswell, Georgia are on this and listening, or anybody else outside the
Most of
lighting.
our listeners are not lighting people on the Restoring Darkness
Really? Okay,
podcast.
that's
Yeah,
great.
most of them aren't. It's different. Get a Grip on Lighting would be the opposite. It's all lighting people.
Yeah.
But Restoring Darkness is mostly non-lighting people, about 70%. But what I would say, and I would say that the lighting industry in 2024 does not know how to do outdoor lighting correctly. And I think Mark
Mhm.
Baker would double down on that with me, 100%. I would say that we're in a process of learning how to use LEDs effectively in the exterior environment, taking all factors into consideration. And I think, to be honest with you, Peter, I think that the key thing to put in the mix is going to be controls. And
Mhm.
if we're going to consider ourselves intelligent as a species, um,
Mhm.
the control of outdoor street lighting, and also commercial and industrial lighting as well, is absolutely fundamental to our environmental responsibility in
Mhm.
2024. We know that this impacts all living things on the planet and is a source of pollution, and controlling it um, is uh, is uh, is actually at the forefront of the solution. I think it's the most important thing, is to have teams at municipalities that are tracking bird migrations and bat migrations and times of year, and this sorts of things, so that we can dim, control, and reduce our light pollution when it's very important, but most of the time anyway. Does that make sense? And I don't think the
Yeah,
lighting industry knows what to do. That's my
yeah,
opinion.
absolutely. Well, I mean, it controls wise, the things that you're saying are possible. Casambi, these are the things that we do. We can get it down to the luminaire level. Obviously, we can use sensors. We can use time of day scheduling, GPS coordinates. But um, the idea that during this period of time there's a specific migration that goes over a specific area, there would have to be some sort of an input with us Kasambi. One of the things that we allow is easy remote access
Mm,
to
yeah.
control the lighting. So again, these technologies do exist. I think to your point, it's about getting smart about how we use them, how we implement them. You're seeing it on the coast right now, where everybody's now using the yellow lights for turtles
Hmm.
and other sea creatures. Certainly, add controls to that equation. There's no reason why you have to have the lights on or dim to any great intensity. I'm sorry, or up to any great intensity. After a certain time, 12, 1 in the morning, for sure.
Hmm.
So all of these things are absolutely things that controls can do, whether it's us or others. I'd posit that Kasambi can do things a little bit easier, but certainly there's a number of other controls companies out there that can do similar things to what we do. But I too would like to see the social elements of this take effect and people to maybe take it a little bit more seriously, for
Hmm.
sure.
Hmm.
Peter, Peter, what do you think about, is it possible to, Michael's going to go insane. Is it possible to control non-LED lights? Could you do high pressure sodiums? Could you do low pressure sodiums? Could you do incandescent light bulbs? Or does it have to be LEDs?
No, it doesn't have to be LEDs. I think LEDs made controls a little bit easier, but there are challenges with the different types of non-LED formats. Regular incandescence, and to your earlier point about concerns about flickering, you're probably going to get more flickering, and there's going to be more concerns around flickering with those things. The controls industry has tended to leave those types of um, illumination, or those types of formats behind. Magnetic low voltage. I'm sorry, magnetic uh, drivers. Are kind of a thing of the past. We have a
Hmm.
hole in our thing. We can't really dim those. I think we have one module out there that could possibly dim them, and we're always concerned about flickering with those light sources. They just weren't made to be dimmed.
Yeah,
As
and I hate to break the news to Mark, but HPS and LPS, they're not making a comeback, Mark. Sorry.
yeah,
It's over, buddy.
You've mentioned,
It's over.
you've
But
mentioned that to me. Yeah.
just for the listeners out there, but that doesn't mean we can't do LED better, Peter. And so
yeah,
we've like I said, I see controls as a fundamental uh, part of outdoor lighting that needs to start growing and expanding. There are already multiple apps out there for different wildlife that you could API into. They already exist. So different
Mm.
universities have already
Oh, yeah.
created Birdcast, Flap. I know there's a bunch of them already that you could do like an Uber situation where, hey, these birds are coming, that we need to have it warmer, a little bit dimmer. The turtles are on their way out to sea or whatever. There's a whole bunch of different things that we could do, but control is the fundamental basis of it. Have you spoken to? I don't think you've been on the Lighting Controls podcast yet with Ron
No, I have
Webster.
not.
No, okay. So
Looking forward to it. Though.
yeah, those guys are lighting controls integrators. Okay, so
Mhm.
what they do is they take the controls and configure them for people to work. I could see departments in cities where you have two or three of these lighting controls integrators that are responsible to manage the city's exterior lighting at night. And
Mhm.
they have control over it. They know what's happening with I don't know, is it IP address based, Peter, where it's 109.233.661 or whatever it
Yeah,
is?
depending on the technology, but it's address based.
Sure.
Yes, in
So they
some
could
way.
have a map of their city with all the different lights, and they could be seeing what's happening in real time. And if there's an accident at the corner of 10th and 11th Avenue, and they need to turn the lights up for the police there, they do it.
Right.
I really see this as a possibility right now for us. I can't see us being that far away from being able to
No,
do
I
that kind of
mean
thing.
when you think about it now, and you just said that there's these applications out there, and they've got APIs, which means they are capable of going and getting the data, or capable of receiving the data coming in.
Sure.
We're doing these things now. We're doing them for different reasons. In the state of California, we have to take in an input that says the grid is horribly stressed, go down to 80%. It's the same thing. In this case, it's saying that whatever ducks are flying overhead at 3 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
turn the lights to whatever the condition is that they should be.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, Going to warm color tuning and so on. Again, that's probably not something that's implemented out there in municipalities today. So that would be a step forward to consider as we're putting in new LED fixtures. Well, there's a reason to have color changing, and then color changing has an effect on migration patterns, what have you. But today's environment, the best we probably could do is change the intensity, turn on and off based on inputs, and that's, as you said, it's an integration issue. It's I would think fairly simple to do in most municipalities, at least large municipalities that have got robust control systems.
Mm. And you know, the I think I'm really trying to push the lighting industry in this direction. But I find it's somewhat of a tragedy when you think that how many of our smartest people in our society spend all their time making Facebook or Google or online gambling or video
Yeah.
games. You know what I'm saying? We have a lot of human capital deployed in those areas, and some of our best people are working on those types of things instead of these types of problems. And one of my mentors in business, he would always say, "Pain makes change." And if you want to affect
Mhm.
change, you got to highlight the pain, because change cannot occur until the pain of staying the same exceeds the pain of change. And I don't know
Mhm.
how to make it painful. This bird migration, this light pollution issue. I mean, Mark has story after story after story of human tragedy related to LED outdoor LED lighting. And we can't seem to get it up high enough on the agenda to affect these kinds of changes. But at least we have the technology, Mark. Once we start convincing people, Casambi can come in and get the controls up and running for all of us. Peter, do you have any final thoughts for the Restoring Darkness listeners out there?
Um, Yeah, I guess it's really about education. I'm thrilled to hear that the majority, or a lot of these people, are not specifically in the lighting industry, because that means that there's people that are interested. In the past, it's always been a very tight community. We're all talking to each other, and maybe getting a little bit frustrated that nobody's noticing the really bad lighting conditions.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then uh, also it's learning from others. I think Canada is doing a pretty amazing job with like, with lighting and specifically other areas around, the migration patterns of animals. I was driving from Edmonton to Banff,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a number of places for bridges.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, One of the things that I had noticed too, as I was driving back late at night after a dinner, and there really wasn't lighting out on those highways.
That's because
Um,
Canada's so huge. Okay.
Canada is
So
huge. Well, the United States is huge too, but it begs the question
no,
too:
but
is
Canada is
do we?
also unpopulated, right? So,
Yeah.
you have in Ontario, for example, most of Ontario has no roads at all.
Mhm.
And you could fit, I think, France, England, and Portugal in Ontario. Maybe throw in
Yeah.
Ireland too, right? In
Yeah.
Quebec, you can fit Germany, France, and Spain. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? Most of Quebec has no roads too. Like most of it has no roads. So yeah,
Right.
it's just it's too expensive to put lights between Edmonton and Calgary. There's just too much space. But that Canada is largely a dark sky reserve. Most of Canada is a dark sky reserve. So that's why
Yeah,
there's
and
so many Canadians in the dark sky movement because we have access to it. You don't have to go that far.
but it's a great when I was thinking as I was driving, and the United States is huge too. I
Yeah.
live in Atlanta. I live in the Southeast. There's
Mhm.
3 hours between Atlanta and Birmingham,
Mhm.
and 2.5 hours between Atlanta and Birmingham. There's not much in between.
Mhm.
Do we need lighting? Do we
It's a
do
good
we
point.
really need poles all over the place? No, we really don't. We got headlights.
Yeah, yeah, and there's arguments that it makes it less safe. There's actually a research emerging now. Like we have Noah put together that article. I don't know if I agree with all of his all of his points in the article, but why, if we have more and more light, are pedestrian deaths going up every year? Like, why is that
Mm,
happening? And so there's something going on. Controls would help us solve this problem because we could try different things without having to change light fixtures, Peter. Right? So you could do the same
um,
street in 2200 Kelvin, tune it to 3000 Kelvin, dim it, change it, and study it. The controls offer a great way to research these problems.
yeah, so long as the fixture's capable, the controls can do that. You're absolutely right. And then then we can affect change. I get to be a little bit cynical. Again, going back to my lights outside, I called them and I asked them why they made the decision, how they're making the decision. The decision was made for one thing only, and that was the price.
Hmm.
They said
Yep.
they wanted to get the price, they wanted to get their cost of energy down. They achieved that with LED, but maybe they could have said, rather than 65%, 60% reduction of energy would have been greater, would have been good. I could have just spent a little bit more on the fixture. But who's making that decision? Are they really educated, and do they understand what we're talking about? Not that they're ignorant, but do they have a full appreciation for it? And that's the education part. It's going to take more of this conversation.
The education
Uh,
starts with the lighting industry because the
yes.
lighting industry is the straw man in the room that's not pointing out these problems. So guarantee you someone from the lighting industry sold them those light fixtures. We know that
Yeah.
100%.
And they were
Okay?
happy to do it.
Yes. Right? So we know that there was someone from the lighting industry that went down there and said, "We're going to sell you these light fixtures, and nothing bad's going to happen. It's going to be great. Everyone's going to love it. You're going to save tons of energy." So the lighting industry needs to be educated first. And
Mm.
first thing we have to do is, I think, and Mark, you'll like this. I think we need to become the lighting and darkness industry, and so that darkness that's why we call it the Lighting and Darkness Foundation. And folks, if
Mhm.
you're listening to this right now, you can go to restoringdarkness.com and you can click the donate link if you want to help us combat light trespass disputes. So, for example, if Mark wanted to sue the city, the Lighting and Darkness Foundation would go investigate the situation, and we would act as expert witnesses in court for Peter and his light trespass dispute with the town he lives in. Because that's what that is. It's a light trespass. So the Lighting and Darkness Foundation does this with the help of none other than I think you're the executive director or president, Mark. What are you? Executive director?
I am the president.
He's the president of the Soft Lights Foundation, which hates the lighting industry, but that's okay. We're coming together. We're working together. And so Mark and I are working together to help people out that have these kinds of issues. And light trespass is trespass. It's not a metaphor. Light pollution is pollution. It is not a metaphor. And if you're one of the 30% of the people listening to this right now in the lighting industry, you need to get on board with this, because also it's going to be a huge source of revenue for us. That's right. The next 10 to 20 years, energy's out. Darkness restoration and night preservation is in, buddy. That's right. All the cool kids. That's right. All the cool people are talking dark skies. They're talking night preservation. They're talking darkness restoration. They're talking about all these kinds of issues. And we need to control these lights more than any other lights in the world. The outdoor lights need to be controlled for a ton of reasons, one of which is all the living things on this planet. So if you made it to the end here with me, go to restoringdarkness.com, check it out. Of course, check out Casambi. I'm looking at it here. It's CASAMBI.com. Check them out for their lighting controls. Thank you for listening. Bye for now.